Well, hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome back to our devotional series. I had a bit of a long weekend, did we? The Queen's birthday. And if you're from North America, that's right. We have a separate holidays, and to be expected from being in New Zealand. So we here in New Zealand celebrate the Queen's birthday. So it's a bit of a long weekend. Crystal and I had the opportunity to go to Arthur's Pass, which is a kind of a hybrid between the Rocky Mountains and, say, the Kootenay Mountains. So really cool. Check out Facebook. Both Crystal and I put up some pictures. If you come here, great place to go hiking, or here in New Zealand, they call it tramping. We are in Russell Moore's book, The Storm-Tossed Family. We're starting chapter 7, and today this is a chapter that he engages the topic of marriage and the mystery of Christ. Chapter 6 talks so much about our roles of men and women and how family is defined and structured or restructured by the cross. And here we find ourselves in chapter 7, marriage and the mystery of Christ. Let's take a look. Our honeymoon was a debacle. I should have sensed some trouble coming when I woke up on our wedding day with severe laryngitis. I felt powerless and frustrated. I kept practicing the words, I, Russell Moore, take thee, Maria Hannah, but to no avail. I croaked them out with a wheezing rasp of an emphysema patient in an oxygen tent. Normally, Maria would have been the one to reassure me through something worrying me, but I'm a stickler for tradition. I wasn't going to see the bride before the wedding. I went through boxes of throat lozenges and endless cups of herbal tea, and just in time for the ceremony, my voice came back. It seemed that all was now made right, but then there was the honeymoon. If social media had existed at the time, now over 20 years ago, I'm quite sure that most of our friends would have assumed we were having an idyllic time from the photographs we would have posted. But we were miserable. First of all, we were both exhausted. The hubbub of the wedding was frenzied enough, but then the day of the rehearsal, a guest had her feelings hurt and threatened to, quote, get sick and boycott the wedding. Moreover, we were both starting new jobs the Monday after the honeymoon. We were moving into a rented house together the same week. But most of all, we were exhausted because the honeymoon meant way too much for us. We were both sexually inexperienced and very much in love. So well, I will just say this, that it was not just a trip for us. My new wife expected that this would be something akin to a scene from a final narrative arc of romantic comedy. I expected it to be akin to a scene from a documentary about mating rabbits. But then we both fell sick. Not sick, but as in the theatrics of our family member, but sick for real. I had picked up a virus while Maria had some sort of allergic reaction, not to me, that became serious enough to land her for a time in the ER at a local hospital. As I waited in line at the pharmacy for antibiotics for both of us, I started to grow resentful. We spent a lot of this money that we really couldn't afford for this trip. But more than that, my mood was darkened because I saw this as a ruined start to a life together. Yes, we had consummated the marriage, but not frankly to the degree that I expected. There was only so much togetherness one could hope for when one of us was in the hospital bed. I kept ruminating on how this was going to ruin all the memories we were supposed to be making. Wouldn't we want, or when we were celebrating our silver or golden anniversaries, to remember moonlit walks and gondola rides instead of watching one another vomit? If this is the honeymoon, I said, what will the marriage be like? My spirits lifted somewhat as we were distracted by our unromantic plight and I focused on solving some of the basic problems. She was much sicker than I, so I tried to care for her, bringing her a can of chicken soup and trying to find a way to open it without a can opener and to serve it without a spoon. By the end of the trip, we were laughing about how we had failed at the easiest part of marriage. It would be all up from here, we joked. This turned out to be, in fact, the case. In the years since, we have faced far more serious crisis, of course, than a pratfall of a honeymoon. We weathered infertility together. We ventured to a Russian orphanage to adopt 2 sons together, not knowing what to expect there or afterward. We reared 5 sons. We've listened as some people railed at me as the right-wing extremist, and others blasted me as a closet liberal. We've grieved at the graves of loved ones, and we've faced things that I wouldn't even want to write about here because they are too emotionally raw. But we have never gone through any of this alienated from each other. Somehow, we came up with an unspoken rule that we would not both go crazy at the same time. When Maria saw me sinking into a depression or buckling under anxiety, she achieved a kind of preternatural calm. I did as the same for her. Sometimes we would exchange places as the stable one in a matter of seconds. I credit that cursed honeymoon for all of that. The opening days of our marriage served, this despite our best efforts, not as a escape from our lives, but as a prelude to our singular life as a married couple. I expected the honeymoon to be about becoming one flesh, but I subconsciously defined this merely in terms of sexual aerobics, when it turned out, by God's good providence, to be a baby step toward a far more comprehensive joining of psyche and affections, and not just bodies. Our honeymoon was ruined, and that just might have saved our marriage. It's interesting about how we just open up this story, this and beginning narrative of marriage. It's very similar to Crystal and I. Our marriage, or our wedding ceremony, was just wrought with issues and people and drama. I call it drama and trauma. Just one thing led to another. And it was, someone was offended here and this didn't work out. And at the end of the day, I remember we were staying in a hotel in Winnipeg for the first night before we were going to head back to Alberta. And we consummated, we had a good time. But then we ended up, I think one of us slept on the floor. I think I slept on the floor just because we had never slept in the same bed together. And that wasn't just the end of it. I remember we then went to Banff and Jasper, had a great time. But I hadn't factored in that I forgot to book an extra night at the hotel. So when the guy came up to me and said, "You're checking out today?" And I'm like, oh, shoot. Okay, so that's checking out at 10 a.m., not tomorrow. And it caused some friction, but not fraction. It caused some issues, some issues of communication, conflict resolution. But these things, I agree with Russell Moore. Those are the things that kind of help deepen our relationship to the point where in June 19 we'll be 21 years marriage. So as we look at this chapter, for some of you that are in those first decade or maybe you're into your second decade, or maybe you had many decades, but then you are now a widow, you can reflect and see how through those times and trials, not only did you have your spouse with you, but also, and more importantly, you always had God with you. For some of you that have seen brokenness because of divorce and you've been separated, or maybe you're separated right now, to know that it may have not worked out with your partner, but to know that it always works with Jesus. On Sunday, I preached a sermon out of the book of Philippians. And there was that one verse to work out your salvation out in fear and trembling, because God is doing this work in you. This work that God's doing, katergazlai, it's a Greek word. And the Greek word literally means full and completed. God is going to complete the full and complete work in you for his glory, not for us. But the reality is that God is not a God of halfway measures. God doesn't just get you halfway and say, okay, you're on your own. God is faithful, and God is committed to you. To know that you might think this is the end of you or the end of your marriage, but it's not. God is going to see you through the trials and the tribulations, the hardships, the habits, the hurts, the pains, the wounds, whatever throws at you. God is not a halfway God, a half-measured God. He'll see you to the end. Well, God bless you. Have a great morning. We're going to continue doing our devotions for the rest of this week. Friday is my day off, so I may or may not post on Friday, but we'll have to see because we had a short week already. But God bless you. I'm praying for you. And remember, stay connected to one another through this lockdown. God bless you, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.